So my name is Sarah, and I will talk about what it is to be a tech lead and how you can find out if this is something for you. And let's kick this off with some question round. So please hand up. So who of you wants to constantly grow in your career? Please give me a sign. Great. Second question, who of you would like to take on more responsibility? And who of you would like to be a manager? Not so many. That's exactly the observation that I did throughout my entire tech career so far. So currently I'm working as a career coach. I'm co-founder of Tech Leaders Academy, where we are helping tech professionals to go into technical leadership. But I'm also a former data scientist, where I also took more responsibility during my career. And there I met so many talented engineers that wanted to take on more responsibility, but actually not as a manager. And yeah, one more sentence about Tech Leaders Academy. As I mentioned, we help tech professionals to grow in their career. So we do trainings, but also coachings. And we also do free live streams and open spaces. So if you like to join the community and exchange on specific topics about technical leadership, just reach me after the talk, and then I can give you more information on that. Yeah, and as many of you would like to take on more responsibility, but probably not as a manager, I have good news for you, because the tech lead is on the rise and it has a huge demand as well. So it's not having a huge demand. So there are also many German companies nowadays who get aware of that and see like a huge impact in offering a tech lead career, I mean. But why is that? So I made 3 observations. The first one is that we're living in a growing IT market, even though we are facing economic crisis right now. Still, we have, and especially during the pandemic, we have seen that the demand for digitalization and software projects have been increasing. So it turns out that IT actually is the driver of an economic innovation, and it actually earns the money. So the companies need good and skilled tech leads who are driving the innovation. Further, we are even more dealing with more complexity in software development. Software development is not anymore about building an easy software or building a website, for example. So projects tend to go longer, include more people, meaning engineers and stakeholders. It contains or builds upon different technologies. And oftentimes, I have to say, IT projects more remember of a Jenga tower, where you really hope that it's not collapsing because you're adding a new feature or adding a new hotfix. And this has the consequence that we need really talented, experienced technical experts combined with technical or leadership skills that are able to navigate through all these challenges and the huge complexity. And the last observation that I had is, obviously, the talent pool is empty or almost empty. So at least last year, Bitkom stated that more than 100,000 tech professionals are missing in the German job market. This means for companies, they need to really rethink how they can retain good, talented people, especially those that are more advanced and more senior. So many companies now are really thinking about how to build a next or another career ladder going beyond the senior and for technical leadership. But what actually is a tech lead? So a tech lead is a leadership role for experienced engineers without being a manager. And most of the time, I would define it as a career track, not a title. Sometimes it's a role. So sometimes people, when they are really experienced in what they are doing, they take over the role, but not without a title. But when I talk about tech lead, I see it as the whole, as a career track that you can choose. And for a long time, going into a manager position was the only way to grow after a senior position. So going the left angle, being a people lead, which had the consequence that engineers had to take on reports. They were then occupied with hiring, thinking about how to grow the team, how to progress and help the people with career development and more with strategy about like how to shape the organization and so on. But since a couple of years, there is a trend that even more companies are establishing like a real second career track, which is called tech lead. And this one is even more linked to technology than the engineering manager, for example. And in the ideal world, these two career paths and these two persons in the company, one the manager and on the other side the tech lead, they work in the perfect symbiosis within, working together with a team and help each other out to really have a great impact. So, however, we have a big problems with career ladders, as you may think of, because there are no industry standards right now. So they differ from company to company. And for example, like these three, I would say, German tech companies, they already established these technical leadership career ladder. And as you can see, like they all name it differently. So sometimes like Personio, they name it staff engineer. Some like SAP say it's the development expert. And I think Zalando calls it principal engineer. However, maybe you may think, hey, this is not new, because in our company, we have this expert track, and you can become an expert. So what is now new? The new is that I see that these career ladders get more formalized. So they really come in, like people really think about what do these people actually should do. So how should they create value for the company? And the second is that I see it has more connection to a leadership role than it was ever thought of before. So what does a tech lead actually do? And for this, I really like the model that Tanya Riley, a book author, she wrote a book about the staff engineer's path. Maybe you have heard about that. I can really recommend if you haven't read that yet. And she came up with a model that I find quite reasonable. So she says a tech lead comes in three pillars. The first one is a tech lead has to oversee the big picture, to have a broader view and understand the context on which technology has to create value. The second one is the execution. So tech leads are more eager to solve complex problems. And the third pillar is leveling up. So tech leads have to share the wisdom about software engineering. Maybe now you think of, okay, what is the difference then to a senior engineer? Because maybe you do kind of this stuff already in your senior position. Well, let's state it in this way. As a senior engineer, or until going to senior level, you grow most of all in being more autonomous in coding, in what you're doing in general. But as a tech lead, you grow your responsibility, of course, of your own work, but also outside of your own work. So for your team and for the whole tech department, maybe also. To be more specific, so what are now the tasks of a tech lead? And what I like to emphasize is, first of all, not every tech lead does all of these tasks. So the tech lead comes in different archetypes, or it can happen that they are different specialization in there. So sometimes you tend more to overlook the architecture. Sometimes you're more into hopping from project to project, digging deep into the technology, and then you really only, or you solve the problems that just occur. Or sometimes you're more general on the way, so you're kind of co-leading the team, but more on from a technical perspective. So coming back to this, the task of the tech lead is, first of all, you are more into strategic work. So, for example, you define technical goals, a technical strategy, you are more into writing a technical vision, and therefore you are driving the innovation by technology. Then you're more occupied with writing concepts or designing concepts. So writing design docs, writing concept for architecture, maybe also view the costs, the advantages and the disadvantages of taking the next technology into your architecture. Also, complexity increases. So complexity work or solving complex problems can be of your task. So you take on tough tasks. Oftentimes you go onto the not so modern projects. So you go more onto the legacy projects, because there is where the complexity comes most of all into place, and you really often have to deal with technical debt. Of course, you will more be occupied with doing reviews, so maybe code reviews, and also teaching. So upskilling is also a big thing. Even though it's not those people are not your reports, you still have or should share your wisdom, your experience with them, and help them to grow, or to also learn the best practices from you. And last but not least, it's about improving the experience overall. So optimize processes, improving collaboration, and making the team being more productive. So maybe at this point you ask yourself, is a tackling still coding? And I can say probably yes, but not as much as before. So not as much as in a senior position. This means that the tech lead you need two requirements when you want to become a tech lead. First of all, of course, you need very deep technical knowledge. So the technical expertise needs to be in place. This means you have to be seen something, or you must have seen some things. So you need to need project experience. You need to work in teams. You need to interact with people, and you must have seen some politics. So how does your company work? How does it earn money? And how is your architecture spread overall? So what is the big picture, as I mentioned? And on the other hand side, you definitely need leadership skills, because, as I mentioned, for example, if you're defining a technical strategy, you need to be able to communicate those ideas to people that are not really technical driven, because then you will have a seat at the table with the management where you have to communicate your ideas and the ideas of your teams in front of people that are not so deeply into tech. You need to be able to teach. That's also something I consider as a leadership skill. And you have to see and evaluate the impact of your own work and the work of the other engineers. And what I also like to mention is oftentimes you act like an influencer. Maybe this sounds a bit off, but oftentimes you really have to influence people of your decisions and opinions. So let's come to an important disclaimer now, because growing in the career ladder and go beyond the senior is not really a hard requirement. So if you have the feeling that you really love what you're doing, if you like to really go deep into the code base, you really like the work of coding, you really need to see the immediate results of what you are doing, and you really cannot cope with politics, I think it's better to stay at the senior level. And still, there are a lot of options to grow, to change projects, to go maybe more into details. to also grow compensation-wise without going into a leadership position. Good, so what is now like a practical checklist? This is something I would like to hand over to you. So if you really think of, am I willing to go into a leadership position, you can ask yourself these 6 questions. Can I translate business goals into a tech strategy? I am willing to leave the technical details. So to take a broader view on like the technical projects that we are doing. Am I okay to receive feedback with some delay? Because maybe I have to present my strategy and then management is going to discuss about that. They have to elaborate, and I don't know if it was successful or not at least after the meeting. Do I like to share my knowledge, or am I able to teach at all? And do I enjoy to be a role model? And last but not least, can I influence people without having the authority? Because remember, you're not the manager of people, still you're acting like an influencer. And coming to my last slide already, maybe now you find yourself in the situation that you plan to become a tech lead, but there is no dedicated career track in your company, or maybe it's broken. Because oftentimes I see that people are offered a tech lead role, but still it's not on the same level as the engineering managers that go the management part. And therefore I have 3 actionable tips for you how to continue here. So first, find a project that has a huge value for your company, maybe revenue-wise, maybe it has huge costs, or it's in other way very important for the company to have a real good standing with this project. And analyze the current challenges that you find there. So from a technology perspective, of course. Then write like a 1-pager to summarize all your findings and really point out how would you solve these challenges. And I can promise you, it's really hard to summarize it in 1 paper. And then go to your manager and present it in a very concise way, and then together find out or figure out how you can act like in this project, contribute to this project as a tech lead, and then try to go into this role first before then helping some HR or some other managers to really build up this career ladder. To summarize, you need to be proactive, take the initiative. If you're not doing it, nobody will do it probably. And I hope you will have some inspiration from this talk, because that's the ending. And if you have questions or want to stay in touch,